Max, let's talk about these Terence Crawford rumors, because there's been rumors flying everywhere that Terence Crawford's going to come out of retirement. You know, whenever a rumor like that comes out, I would take it with much more seriousness if it was built around rumors of actual fight negotiations, or there was a more serious fight being floated than just a sort of Twitter postulating on Bud versus Boots that you've seen, you know, just basically come up whenever the idea of Bud coming out of retirement happened. The real thing that this originates from is Bud sparring Lester Martinez in Lester Martinez's camp. To me, that is a much stronger reflection of what I've already suspected about Terence Crawford's retirement, and the fact that he's still actively training in retirement, which we know. And that's because this is what I like to call a boxing retirement, which, you know, you've seen Tyson Fury have a boxing retirement, Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, and you know exactly what I mean. It's a fighter who retires because they don't want to have to deal with the business baggage of being the main money-making champion in the sport, essentially, which is the situation, or a large portion of the sport, which is the situation all those men found themselves in. And you can basically free yourself from the annoying boxing politics, enjoy your money, enjoy your fame, enjoy your influence, and then come back later when you get the right paycheck. And that is exactly what Terence Crawford is doing. You know, he threw a parade after he beat Canelo. He did this tour of Africa. He did all of these things that you could imagine he dreamed of doing in his past when he dreamed of being a world-renowned famous champion. And he absolutely has that right after all that he's been through in the sport, and that miraculous performance against Canelo, the performance against Porter, the performance against Spence. He's went on a generational run and deserved to be richly rewarded. And I think part of that rich reward was not having to deal with the boxing politics of being the number one earning fighter in the sport. And of course, the real final reward is going to be the paycheck that he gets for whatever fight he comes back for. Because, of course, like all those other fighters I listed, he will come back for the right fight. He will come back for the right paycheck. And, of course, Boots Ennis is going to be the first name on people's minds, because right now he's the number one pound-for-pound American fighter. I mean, Shakur Stevenson. But he's also at a much more realistic weight for Bud to fight. He's a much more interesting stylistic matchup, and of course Bud has a close personal friendship with Shakur and would not fight him. That's never really even been a fight that people would even think would happen. Boots is a much more interesting matchup. It's an incredibly fascinating stylistic matchup. It would be, man, I want to say probably the most high-level fight in history between two pure switch hitters, which inherently makes it pretty much irresistible from a boxing fan perspective. And I think the reason why, even now as I say it, I'm starting to venture into, like, is it the fight that's actually going to get Bud out of retirement? Could we actually see this fight in 2027? Because I think that boxing fans the world over would be excited for it. I think Turkey would be excited for it. I kind of question Dana White's real motivation and passion for anything in the fight game at this point, but that's a completely separate notion. People would love to see this fight. There would be people there to put this fight on. This fight would probably be in a huge stadium. You know, it's one guy who's close to 40-0, one guy who's over 40-0. Two undefeated fighters. Two fighters you can go back and forth on the skill sets of endlessly, both offense and defense. And a fight that's incredibly hard to pick because of the fact that they're both switch hitters. You could tell me that either fighter stops either fighter in any round of this fight, and I believe you. You could tell me either fighter wins by split decision, I believe you. Tell me it's a draw, I believe you. Right? This is a really impossible fight to predict. But I did think about it, and I think that my initial gauge on who wins this matchup, because again, it's just an irresistible fight. They're two of my favorite fighters ever. Bud kind of has a more unique style, though. I think there's been a lot of fighters before like Boots Ennis, although it's a rare breed. I've said before that Boots reminds me more of any fighter. This is insanely high praise. Well, Sugar Ray Leonard. Other than Sugar Ray Leonard, he reminds me more of Sugar Ray Robinson than maybe of any fighter since Sugar Ray Robinson. I get it, I wasn't alive for most of that time, so there could be some old head who was around in the 50s, 60s, like, no, this fighter was way more like Sugar Ray. I don't know, but the way that he holds his hands low, the way that he's always bouncing back and forth, and just the natural, flowing, instinctive, offensive skill set from Boots reminds me a lot of Sugar Ray Robinson in the way that he's just extremely flowing offense to defense, right? Which is another thing that Terence Crawford has, that Boots Ennis also has, that makes this fight so hard to predict. The thing that makes me lean towards Boots in this fight, though, in addition to the 1.5 years off, or however long it would be for Bud once this fight comes around, which it would be 2027. The thing that actually makes me lean towards Boots is the fact that Boots is such an explosive puncher naturally. He doesn't take time to get into a fight, and he can drop you and land with fight-changing power early, reliably. And Bud has to download information. He just does. Bud looks unstoppable once he actually downloads that information and once he gets going. But in the time that he has to download that information in the first few rounds, it's not like he's there to be hit or something. It's not like he's a worse defensive fighter. It's just that it seems like he responds a little slower, right? He's a little more able to be hit and a little more able to be trapped. And we've seen it before. That's when he's essentially able to be dropped. If Mean Machine can drop Bud in the first round, Bud knows that he can be knocked down. Bud knows that he can be hurt. And I get it. People are thinking right now, well, Boots can be hit too. Boots can be hurt too. That's what makes this an inherently great fight and what makes it so hard to pick. This is really, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's basically the only edge that I can find in this fight right now. It's the only thing that one fighter has really a benefit over the other. I think that Boots has a chance to drop Bud in the early rounds and change the fight. And that's about the only fight-changing X-factor type of difference that I can make between the two. And the reason why that sways me to the point of actually picking Boots is that, well, I think that Boots has a good chance to win the early rounds, and I think he's got, you know, a 50-50 to, you know, even to above 50% chance to win the championship rounds, because in my mind, the championship rounds are a toss-up, right? In my mind, the rest of the fight damn well might be a toss-up. I mean, I think that Bud would probably control the middle rounds because that's when he would figure out a look, if he can find one. I don't really know what the look would be on Boots. He seems to be very calm and collected and hard to read because he is actually such a natural hands-low puncher. Those guys are just really, really hard to get a read on. What do you think made Sugar Ray Leonard and Sugar Ray Robinson so great? You kind of have to get in the inside and pressure fight them, which I guess is what Bud would have to do. That sounds like an all-time classic to me, to be honest with you. If Bud's forced to pressure fight on Boots Ennis, you're talking about an all-time classic fight through the middle rounds. If that's what Bud decides, oh, I'm getting hit really hard here, Boots is counterpunching me, these shots are hurting, I have to move forward and implement offense on him, that fight's just going to turn into a war. That's going to be an all-time classic. So again, the fight fans are going to want to see this fight. Boxing fans are going to have to push for this fight. But ultimately, one of the people in charge, the power brokers, the people with the money, are actually going to have to think that this fight is going to be worth it. And hopefully with the streaming model, whether it's DAZN, whether it's Netflix, some big streamer will be willing to pick this fight up and not say, oh, you know, we're just going to have Bam versus Inoue be the big fight for this part of the year. We'll just have Boots fight somebody else, have that be the big fight for that part of the year. Like, I hope that they commit and say, you know, this fight is worth it. It's worth getting a big enough paycheck. And I hope that at the end of the day, I'm just not that confident. That's really what makes me sad, is that neither Boots nor Bud are the most reliable when it comes to actually getting fights made. And that's just been a matter of fact in their careers. You can blame whoever you want to for that. That's just a matter of fact. So when I hear these two names matched up, I love sitting here and postulating on the hypothetical. But do I actually think the fight's going to happen? Sadly, probably not, as is true for many boxing rumors like this. But that's why I have this channel, to sit here and, you know, hypothesize on potential great future fights like these. And who knows, if in a year's time we've seen this fight, it's an all-time classic, and maybe we're getting set up for an even bigger money version, Boots versus Bud 2. I'll look back on this and laugh and be like, wow, I was right, that fight was crazy. Because I really don't think there's any way that this fight wouldn't be a classic, and I think it's worth it to make. And I think that it's as good of an opponent as any as we've seen for Bud's to make a fight for Bud that can get him out of retirement. Because the fact is, this fight is going to be at 160. This fight would be at 160. And I think that's a great weight for Bud. I don't think we've seen him fight there, but it's in between the two weight classes we've seen him fight at. And he honestly looked great at 168. I think he has a good chance to look really good at 160 with a lot of strength and a lot of speed. And I think, you know, putting even more power per punch on both these guys and giving themselves a little more punch resistance and sturdiness too at that extra weight has a chance to make this fight even more combative and explosive, which, I mean, who doesn't want that? Although, again, maybe that favors Boots too, because again, part of the reason you have to favor Boots is the age advantage and the lack of a break. The fact that, you know, yeah, Bud can be out here training, even sparring champs like Lester Martinez, but Boots is still out here fighting, you know, title defenses, unification fights, and, you know, trying to maintain a spot at the top of the sport, whereas Bud is in this, you know, semi-retired state waiting for the right paycheck. It just leans me back towards Boots even that much more. But let me know what you guys think about all this. Do you guys think Bud is going to come back? Do you think it's all smoke and mirrors? Again, all he really did was spar Lester Martinez.